Hi folks, welcome to my Bit Retro Journal. I'm working on my Amiga and I'm doing this for the month of May. We're celebrating Amiga. I have ordered it's a IDE to CF card adapter and also a CF card to SD adapter, and then I'm going to use an SD to micro SD. So it's going to be like, I don't know if you've ever seen these nested dolls, right? So you can open these up and there's a doll in there. So I'm kind of going to do that for the for my drive, see if it works. If not, I can always just get a 2 gigabyte CF card, compact flash card. But I like SD cards, so but I wanted to have the flexibility. But that's not coming until June, and so I wanted to just play around with the hard disk. And so I did have two parts of a 40 pin IDE, small 2.5 inch IDE cable. I've got plenty of the 3.5 inch, the larger drive ones, but none of the smaller drive ones. And so it was really hard to get this to work. So, and there were two halves, so I had to take one of the connectors off, and they're really hard to get off, so they kind of broke. I pulled it off and created a small cable with the other piece because the pieces were really small. Clamped it on and put it on, and the first time I tried it, I actually didn't try it on the 2.5 inch drive. I actually have one of these bigger drives. It's a Western Digital. It's a really nice drive. It's 40 gigs. It's whisper quiet. Half the time I thought maybe it was broken because I couldn't hear it. And since it was 40 pin, I could actually plug in a Molex into here. And so what I did is I have a cable that comes off of the floppy, and then it wires to the floppy and then the hard drive. And it saw it the first time. I was excited, and then didn't see it after that. Couldn't figure out why. I definitely know how to. It configured perfectly under WinUAE. I have one of those USB to IDE connectors, so I can hook both of these drives up to my modern computer. And so I finally found a 40 gig IDE laptop drive, 2.5 inch drive, connected it up, and then I had to grab the 5 volts. So there's the four other lines are 2 5 volts of ground, and then an ATA select that tells you you're using the bare IDE. So I only needed one of the 5 volt lines because the grounds, there's like 7 grounds on this connector. Hooked it up. It saw it initially, but then it didn't see it again. So and it saw the empty that I had created. And at this point, I had read enough about the limitations. I have the 2.5 ROM version 37.300, which supposedly has a 40 megabyte limit, as opposed to a 4 gigabyte limit. And so I created the smallest partition, which on WinUAE is 4 megabytes. Next one is 65 megabytes. And I saw that, and I was like, it works. But then I couldn't. I was trying to format it. Well, not format it, but repartition it, and then it stopped seeing it. Now this has seen it multiple times, so I think I'm good to go. But then it started smoking, and I'm like, I just blew my ID interface. But it took me a while to look. I didn't see anything burn on the board. Took the cable apart, and the cable actually, the ground at pin 40, I think, or 39, and pin 40 sort of touched, I guess, and the 5 volts caused the plastic sheath here to melt, blowing white smoke. Luckily, I have to say the Amiga's ID interface, they did a really nice job. I mean, because all these ways I've pulled it off and on and had this thing pop off is, you get frustrated and you stop being careful. I've even pulled the Molex connector off the 3.5 inch drive, the big 40 gig Western Digital, and yet this interface is still working, so I'm really excited that I didn't break it. Right now I'm not touching this because I think the cable, even after I took the cable off, saw where it was shorting, and realized that the part that I didn't have fixed, I guess the reason the cable was in pieces is because the person that threw it out just did a mess with the other side, because so the way these ribbon cables works is there's forks on the little pins, and they were all kind of bent outwards and bending over and ripping into the other the lines. And there was a bunch of them like that. And that's why when I hooked this drive up, put the power on, it started going, and then it'd move it around, and the computer would boot up, and the drive would run. And so there was all sorts of weird stuff going on. And so finally, and then when I reclamped my part, it kind of worked, but then it started doing that again. And so when I took that part off, I saw, after the smoke, I saw that. And so I finally pulled some of those pins, tried to straighten them. Half of them, one of the forks broke off, so then I had to kind of bend the fork inwards to try to hit the middle of the ribbon wire, and had to test it, even created a special test harness. So I have this is a cheap, I like my other multimeter better, the analog one, but this is a cheap one. It doesn't, unfortunately, neither one has a sort of a continuity function where it beeps, but they both do just get low, high, well, it just shows you that you have a connection. You use the ohm resistance, and I added these so that I could poke them in. After the first time I fixed it, I plugged it in, still didn't work, took it out again, checked them again, there's still one bad, fixed it, plugged it back in. That's where I am now. So I learned a lot. I know how to, definitely how to, on WinUAE, format hard disks. So when I get my IDE to CF interface, I'm not going to have to do any investigating. I thought this would be easier. I spent a lot of time. At least I learned a lot, but it was very frustrating. So, and I know, when I asked on forums, the only advice I got is don't use floppy, don't use hard disks or magnetic media. You have to use IDE to CF cards. So you never really get the answer you want. And I will be using an IDE to solid state circuitry. I'm not going to use this hard disk, but I just wanted to, I had a cable and I wanted to give it a try, and getting that stuff from overseas is going to take until June, mid-June or end of June now. And I also like magnetic media. I'm a big fan of zip. I just did a zip disk video, and I'm going to also try to hook this up to the parallel port to see if I can get that zip drive, my parallel zip drive to work as well. And again, a big fan of floppies. And if you know me, I'm a QL, right? I love the micro drives. So there's something nostalgic about the magnetic media. I could store a program on a cassette, was just blew my mind. So there's something cool about that. And so, this is a hobby. I'm not trying to use this as a professional machine. So yeah, I'm going to play around with actual real hard disks. But at the same time, the solid state ones, the IDE, the CF was only like $4, and it comes with a 44-pin cable. That's why I got it. So finally I'll have a right cable, but I am going to check it. So the one thing I learned is check for both, it's consistent and there's no shorts. So I found a good way of doing that. But that's my advice if it doesn't work. But kudos to Amiga, Commodore Amiga. Man, they made us a really, I guess they must have figured that the IDE port gets plugged and unplugged all the time. So they made it robust. It did not go and kill any of the chips. So I was very happy to see that. So what I want to do first is I'm going to, so I created this 4 megabyte on WinUAE, and what I want to do is actually see if I can partition it. And I'm first going to try to partition it to just 40 megabytes, see if it works. And then, and actually I haven't even checked to see if this works, but I assume I can, if I take HD, I'm going to move this down here. And what I'm going to do is, I know HD tools, this is a pretty big file, so this should just copy over and see if it copies. Disk is being hit. Yeah, that's being hit. Yeah, works, okay. So I know my disk works, and so what I want to do is see if I can partition it to 40 megabytes, and if that works, partition it. I talked to Chris Edwards, and he said it should be 120 megabytes. Although I've read a lot that the version, so this is ROM version 2.05. Well, this is ROM 2.05, and it's version 30. I have version 37.300. There are 3 versions that came with the Amiga. There was 37.299, which didn't support hard disks. There was 37.300, which had a bug in it, supported 400 up to 40 megabytes, and then there was 37.350, which supported 4 gigabytes. Anyway, I just want to learn what options I have before I get my IDE drive. I'm not actually going to use this. I've also read a lot about, once I get my hard disk, solid state hard disk set up, life isn't still going to be as simple as I might think. Like the games, for instance, you can't just copy over and run. you have to do something called use WHD load, and so I'm sure that's going to be another headache. So it's usually with a new machine, until you become familiar with everything. Like I've become very familiar now with partitioning because I had to do it all weekend thinking I did it wrong. And so now, of course, it's simple, but before it was a little tricky. And the same goes for the QL, when you don't know how something works, it's usually a pain. But I've learned a lot, and that makes me happy. But the process, it was a little frustrating, especially because I thought the whole time that I had broken my ID interface. So I'm going to set up the camera, and we're going to just go through trying to format several times. I'll probably do that very quickly. So let me do that. All right. So this is my setup. You can kind of see the computer. You can definitely see kind of the hard disk light, which I wanted you to maybe move it a little closer so you can see the hard disk light. There we go. And yeah, I want to be careful I don't move it too much because I shouldn't have moved it now. We'll see if it works. But so the first thing I want to do is, like I said, I copied, so that's on there. Let me just run HD Toolbox from here since it'll show me if the disk, yep, so it is seeing the drive. I'm actually going to exit because I'm not sure if it's going to, like on other machines, say, oh, the device is busy because you have stuff on it open. So I don't know if the Amiga does that or not, like other computers do. So I'm going to use HD Tools off with a floppy. And I'm going to, it did see the drive, so I'm going to just repartition it. So it's still seeing it. So maybe if I do a change partition type instead. So usually what that does, so that should be fine. Yeah, so this should, what I'm trying to get is to actually wipe the old partition away, which is what this has done. So now I have a brand new thing. So if I delete this partition, and then I shrink this partition, because before that's what I want. Yeah, so what my, changes to DH0, what my hope is that I can do a quick format because I don't want to have to, the long format is going to take forever. I mean, I assume it's quicker on WinUAE, but let's see what this does. Now let's see if this format, being 135, yeah, so now let's do the quick formats. That's what I wanted. All right, quick format. Yeah, and hopefully, and it's changes are empty. There we go. All right, so that works. Now it didn't do the. Let me copy this over, and I'm going to try one thing, which is, and I'll probably abort it if it takes too long, but I'm going to try to. I'm just going to copy this file over again just to see what. Now it may be that it's not actually seeing the 435, and if I fill it up over that 40 megabyte limit, it'll give me read errors. So far it works, so I don't know if that's true or not. And I don't have enough info to fill up 135 megabyte disk. But let me do this, and again, if this takes too long, I'm going to just abort it. But format if I do a regular format, is this going to take a long time? Let me try that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good sign. So it formatted the whole thing. It has two empty volumes, though. What's that all about? Why does it have two empty volumes? Oh, I must have created a second partition. Oh, no. That's gone now. Oh, it was just cached. Okay, 135 mega. So I don't even feel like I have to copy anything over because it actually, so it can definitely read, well, actually, Chris Edwards said 120, so it can do 135. Yeah, so, yeah, so I meant to do under 120. I was thinking 140. So yeah, if it can do 135, it can do, let's copy one more thing over there. Let's do a different file. This time let's do HD backup. I think they're both about a little under 100K each. And next video you'll find out why I know this, because as I said, I had to recreate this whole install disk by hand. So I became very familiar with it. Yeah, looks like it works for 135. So again, I have Workbench, well, the Kickstart 2.05 version 37300 says it only can do 40 megabytes, so I don't know. That's good. All right. So anyway, got this to work. Took a lot of effort. You only get to see the fruits of my labor. So there's one more thing I want to do. I'm going to shut this off for now. Everything's working. I'm also going to check later on to see if I can read this disk now on WinUAE. So yeah, if you notice, this keyboard just has right now cardboard plate. I do have the original back plating. If you saw one of my quick clips during January, I actually did I painted it because it was rusty. And the reason I haven't put it on yet is because I'm going to, I bought an entire replacement keyboard because it had a relatively good looking keyboard membrane, and it was only like $50 for the whole thing. So I'm going to use it. I'm going to replace the keyboard membrane, and put together a really good keyboard. And then I'll probably sell the other one, for pretty inexpensive, because, sometimes they go for $100, but I got this one it was in UK for £39, which isn't that expensive. And I had it shipped to a friend in the UK, so the shipping was really inexpensive. And so they're going to bring it to me after they visit their parents. So that's a good way to do that, shipping-wise, in the UK. I think it was like only £3 or £3.5 shipping, whereas it would have been like 30 shipping here. So that's why I have this in pieces. But again, yeah, you know, since I had to hook the pin either 41 or 42 to get the 5 volts and the grounds. There's like, as I said, there's 7 grounds coming on this cable, and I think it was from here that it smoked. That's why I thought of one of these chips. But this thing must have popped off so many times, and so did this. But yeah, surprised that it didn't blow anything. But so, if you see this beast here, let me unplug this. You can see sort of I've already unscrewed this. Let me unplug this. So this is the Alps drive that I actually fixed myself. And if you can watch a video, but you can see there's a switch on here that it says, when you'll see it, but it says Amiga and QL. And the QL really just uses a PC drive, so it's Amiga and PC. And one thing I had to do, and so there was actually a shield that came down here, which I bent in, which I could undo, but I also had to bend this back. What I initially had done is I didn't keep, let me take this part off if I can. So, this drive, if I left it off this way first, because I figured I didn't want to muck with this particular item and destroy it. But what happened is, if you can see, I don't want to break anything. If you can see, there are gaps right here, and when this thing pops out, they actually pop up. And what would happen is that would cause this to disassemble, and then also the head here. Let me pop the disk out, and if I leave my fingers on here, it should be fine. But what would happen with the disk is this head is very delicate, and it kind of bounces around because it has basically a metal plate that forms a spiral, and it was kind of so that when it hits the disk, I guess it can float. And it was catching, the head was catching on this mechanism here, and so it kind of bent the head sideways, and I had to push it, bend it back in by taking a screwdriver and pushing it back in. I don't know if I can show this on camera now. I'm going to give it a try. Yeah, so that head has sort of a spiral little metal plate so that it can actually bounce around like that. And it was skewed to the side because it got caught many times. So I was able to fix it. Obviously, it still works. So I decided it was safer to put this on, and so then I had to bend this piece back. Again, still undoable, but it does make me happy. But you know, it's so this little tab is for the faceplate to kind of have a resting place. But yeah, so I'm still sort of undoable. Not that I will ever undo it, but I don't like to damage any old equipment if I can avoid it. So what I want to do today, I actually found a second drive and a replacement ribbon cable. So this is one that's Mitsumi. It might be similar to the ops drive. What's weird about it in the back is it has its connectors. It only has the top row basically, and the bottom row is mostly missing. So here's a spare one. I may have made it modified, but it also came with. I took this ribbon cable out from this. This came from an old rack mount machine, and you know it was old, and they were being decommissioned. You know it was old that the fact that it had a floppy drive in it, and they had like 5 or 6 of these machines, and this was the only floppy cable that was undoable. So these things, most of the floppy cables, like once they're snapped together, they're almost impossible, whereas these kind of snap in on the outside. So I found a good set. But what I want to do, you can see this is kind of a mess with that. So I kind of want to get a cable that's going to go here and then come and hook in and doesn't have any extra stuff. The reason I want this cable to stay put is because I use this for my QL for the 5 1/4 and 3 1/2 inch combo drive, and it needs this kind of connector. So I created sort of this monster cable, this Frankenstein cable, and I don't want to use it in my Amiga anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate one and measure it so that I'm going to unplug this one. Come on. There we go. I'm gonna create a better cable. So that's the last thing I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do it off camera, and then I'll install it and I'll call it a day. But yeah, so this is a nice ribbon cable for that. So I'm gonna come back to that. Cable number 1 is done, and you can't do this without having one of these. And so what I did is I actually had it going in this direction because it folds over. Give it a little bit more strength, and then you put one of these over it. And again, what's nice about these, both of these fit in on the outside, so they're really easy to take off. The really bad ribbon cables snap in on the inside, and there's no way to take them off without ruining the cable. So these are all completely undoable. So that's really nice. Okay, so there's my cable, and that is going to go in like that. Perfect, and then this goes like that. And the idea is that I just want this to basically fold back up and just come in like that. Yeah, that's the ticket, nice and short. So yeah, I'm going to come back. All right, here's the cable, perfect length. It's all secured. Again, these clips are really nice because you can undo them so easily. And so, so this is going to go in here, like so. And again, there we go. That's in there. Get my floppy back in here. And this is going to go underneath the floppy, where I think it's a good place to have it. Yeah. Lots of room, and then this is going to go right here. Oopsie. Oh, that's nice. And then this. So that's nice and out of the way. Look at that. That's nice and clean. I don't have to have it. Yeah, and I can actually adjust this here by just, yeah. So there's places to adjust. We just don't want this to, there we go. So that can sit here. Oh, that can sit there. Oh, maybe keep it closer to the original. There we go. Yep. Ah, that's just nice. Look at that. There we go. It's all the way in. That's perfect. I got a screw actually that I can. I do have screws on the back too that I'll put in later on, but let's put this screw in first because that's just gonna secure it somewhat here. Look at that. That's nice. Nice and out of the way. Let's move this back here, and that should fit nicely. Yeah, look at that. Ah, that's going to be nice. That's exactly what I wanted. I'm going to turn this on again. And let's put the disk in here again. Well, let's actually boot it up with without a floppy yet. Let's see what that does. Yeah. Oh, because it has the hard disk. I see the hard disk. So it actually, let me move this camera up just a little bit. You can see that it actually has because the disk is bootable. So what I need to do is actually, I don't know how to boot it from here, so I'm just going to turn it off. So the hard disk still works. Pop in the floppy. Boot that up. It's reading the floppy. Nothing's ever guaranteed with this machine, but I think I have that fixed. So yeah, it looks like it's working. So yeah, much cleaner than having this Frankenstein cable in here. And it's still seeing empty. Still has that HD backup. I think if I put this, it's going to say something about font. Yeah, but that also is true when I have it on WinUAE. So I've got figured out how to do this. I'm not going to use this hard disk though. 135 megabytes, so it went above the 40 meg and the 120 meg. So yeah, I don't know why, because again, this is version 37.300, and I've read that 40 meg it has a bug, it's its limit. So maybe it shows itself when you're copying files and it's reaching that limit. So if you know how it manifests itself, I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, just some routine maintenance. Again, I will eventually have this machine running perfectly. CF to IDE interface, better keyboard, get this all back. So all this stuff is working. This is set now, a new ribbon cable. Although, you know, I did fix this one, and this is working. So I have that. All right, I'm going to end here. Happy Amiga, and thanks for sort of joining me on my journey of, you know, as a noob figuring out the Amiga. So it's, you know, baby steps, but I'm so happy that my IDE interface is not broken and it's working. So that's a good sign. So, yeah, thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.